Hi, this is Ming and I'm back at it again with another video. For this video, I want to share to you a timely talk. This talk was published this 13th of September 2020 in the Facebook page of Mental Health Resilience Podcast.
Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Happy Sunday po sa lahat po ng ating mga kasama dito po sa ating Zoom room. Welcome po kayo. Happy Sunday. At sa ating pong mga kapodcast na patuloy na tumututok at makikinig, matututo sa ating pong usapan sa umaga po ito. Welcome po kayong lahat. Tayo po ay may importanteng topic sa umaga po ito. May kinalaman po ito sa suicide contagion. So, tingnan po natin, matuto tayo kung ano nga ba ang usapang ito, ano? Tingnan natin kung ano ang epekto ng social media dun sa mga vulnerable minds, ano po? Ayan, so sana ay matuto po tayo sa umaga pong ito sa ating pong pag-uusapan. So, akin pong binibigay na ang pagkakataon para magkaroon tayo ng opening prayer with Sir Ruben.
Ayan, tayo po ay manalangin. Mapagpala at makapangyarihan po namin Diyos ang tahanan niya sa mga langit. Sa umagang ito, Panginoon, kami po ay magkakaroon muli ng podcast at ang mangunguna po sa amin pong topic ay si Ma'am May. Nawa niyo po siyang pagkalaban ng karunungan nagmumula po sa inyo at lahat po ng mga makikinig ay maging kapakinabangan po nila ito ang mga topic na kanilang mapapakinggan. Nawa, Panginoon, gabayan po kami sa aming pong pag-aaral at nawa ang inyong Santong Espiritu ang siyang manguna sa amin. Pagpatawad Ama ang aming pong mga nagawang pagkukulang at pagkakasala, patnubayan niyo po kami sa buong oras ng aming pong pag-aaral sa pangalan ng aming Panginoong Jesus.
Amen.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Sir Ruben, for that wonderful opening prayer. Ngayon pong umaga na po ay we are blessed to have one of our volunteers na po willing to share with us So I would like to introduce her to you, our dear viewers in Facebook Live and also here inside our Zoom meeting. So, ayan. So, this young woman na po is one of my co-majors back in our school in Adventist University of the Philippines. She graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and also became a part of the human resource in one of her companies before. And also, I can see that she is a very active and influential person when it comes to blogging. Na po. She is an aspiring content creator in YouTube with her YouTube page entitled Ming's Fabulous Essay and a mental health advocate. So I also see her as a person who everyone can lean on to. She is a passionate listener. She is a person who would like to share to the people around her that mental illness is something that we cannot deny, but we need to accept it and be willing to recognize it and be willing to ask for help. So yeah, that is her advocacy to stop the stigma in mental illness, and she is very active in letting mental health be be more available to all the people. So, mental health, um, mental health service more available to the people. So, our topic this morning is to share suicide contagion, the impact of suicide seen on social media to vulnerable minds. Our speaker this morning is Miss Australie Main Ramay. Let's give her the time.
Ayan. Hello, good morning and happy Sunday everyone. Naririnig po ba ng maayos ang aking voice? Okay po, okay. Sige, so let me share my screen with you. Asan na yan? Okay. While sharing, ayan, nakikita na po ba ang aking screen?
Yes po, Miss Main.
Okay. Ayan. So, una po ay salamat, Miss Arian, for that wonderful intro. Nakaka-touch naman. Okay. So, yes, kagaya po na sinabi ni Miss Arian earlier, my topic for this morning is about suicide contagion and its impact, the impact of suicide seen on social media to vulnerable minds. So sa lahat po na nandito sa Zoom meeting at sa nanonood ng Facebook Live, thank you for being with us here this morning. Ayan, sige. Let's start na. First, here are some questions to ponder upon. One, are behaviors such as suicide ideations contagious? Number two, what are the modes of transmission? Kasi syempre, hindi lang naman yung virus yung may modes of transmission, but also these kinds of contagion din. Number three, who are the most vulnerable? And lastly, how to protect yourself and the people around you from this contagion phenomena. Okay, first let's define muna what is emotion contagion. And later, we will differentiate between emotion contagion and suicide contagion. So, according to Psychology iResearchNet, emotion contagion is a phenomenon that individuals tend to express and feel emotions that are similar to those others. In other words, you do not only observe your friend's emotions, but they also affect your own emotional expressions and emotional state. Back in the ancient times, dyan nagsisimula yung mga rave, yung mga mass rave na mass hysteria, yan. That is because of emotion contagion. So, because nai-influensahan ka ng friend mo ng emotions, ikaw din na-adapt mo yun sa sarili mo. And then, we unconsciously tend to mimic and synchronize our own nonverbal expressions with nonverbal expressions of other people. So, most of the times, unconsciously yung pag-mimic natin ng ating expressions of other people. Thus, we smile, frown, move, cry, sit, or stand in the same way as others without necessarily being aware of our copying behavior. Siguro kung napapansin nyo, minsan kung may kasama tayo or may kaibigan tayo na kasama natin na nakangiti or tumatawa, natatawa na rin tayo. Or kung yung iba, may kinokonsult tayo na umiiyak, tayo na rin parang naiiyak. So that is an example of emotion contagion. Excuse me. There are different factors that may facilitate emotion contagion. The first factor relates to the nature of relationship between persons, namely empathy. When individuals love, like, or identify with others or share their goals, they are more likely to catch the other person's emotions. So dito, ang sabi, sa emotion contagion, kapag ikaw ay ina-identify mo yung self mo with others or kunwari may nag-share kayo ng goals, mas more likely na makakatch mo yung kanyang emotion. So what is suicide contagion naman? It is, according to NCBI, suicide contagion is, according to time.com, yan, Time Magazine. The phenomenon by which exposure to one's suicide death can trigger suicidal behavior in others. So yan ay from Time Magazine. And according naman sa NCBI, it is the contagion of a behavioral disorder. Contagion of behavioral disorder is generally defined as increased risk upon affliction of someone in the same social sphere. Parang yung na-mention ko earlier, it's when you identify yourself with your friend or your loved one na kasama mo. However, according to Dr. Madeline Gould, Dr. Madeline Gould is a PhD and MPH, Master of Public Health, and a professor in Columbia University. Yes, and sabi niya, it could occur as well for both real and fictional characters portrayed in the media. So itong suicide contagion na to, hindi lang siya nangyayari o hindi lang natin siya nakukuha or hindi lang tayo nakahawaan ng ating mga kasama talaga or ng mga tao na we have relationship with, but also pwede rin siya natin makuha from real or fictional characters portrayed in the media. According to AJC News naman, analysis suggests that at least 5% of youth suicides are influenced by contagion. Ayan. According sa report ni Miss Margo, ayan, back in 2014. Back in 2014 yun, and ngayon, we cannot imagine how gaano na tumaas yung percentage ng youth suicides caused by suicide contagion. Ayan. So next part, what are the modes of transmission? So like how COVID-19 is transmitted through water droplets, ayan. Meron din naman modes of transmission itong suicide behaviors, ideations, and tendencies. Number 1, through peers and interpersonal relationships, and number 2, through media and internet. Sa ating mga peers, di ba, minsan kapag may mga kasama tayo na may mga ganitong behaviors, parang minsan na-adapt din natin, minsan i-introject natin sa sarili natin na ay parang siya, may suicidal behavior siya. So parang nakukuha mo rin siya. So, especially that youth are very vulnerable. Actually, matatakot din natin siya later. Because we are still adapting to the outside world, to this world. So, isang malaking danger yon kapag mali yung na-adapt natin through our peers. And as Dr. Gould described, this generally show that clusters did occur, primarily among teenagers and young adults. So, in her study, nakita ko lang yung abstract, but then hindi ko nakuha yung PDF kasi may bayad siya. And I'm broke. So, sabi doon, nakita sa study niya na there are clusters of suicide among peers na primarily among teenagers and young adults. So, kita niyo kung gaano ka-vulnerable ang ating youth sa ganitong klaseng contagion. Next, through media or internet. Characteristics of the media presentation, the individual and interactions between media and individual factors impact suicide contagions. So yung interaction na mismo sa viewer at sa media, and yung syempre may kasama rin dapat na individual factors yan. Depende rin kung mahahawaan tayo, kung vulnerable ba tayo. So paano nga ba na i-enforce itong contagion na ito through media or internet. Sa mga news, ayan. Number 1, repeated news coverage of the same story. Yung paulit-ulit mo na siyang nakikita na nakita mo na kanina, nakita mo na ulit, makikita mo ulit mamaya. So yun, parang tatata kasi yun sa isip natin. Next, front page coverage and larger size headlines. So kung yun agad yung unang-unang makikita mo, di ba? Parang yun yung papasok ka agad sa utak mo. And celebrity suicides have greater impact. For example, sino ba? Yung lead singer ng Linkin Park, Chester Bennington. Di ba? He committed suicide. Now, ang laki ng impact nung news, nung lumabas yung news about his death, and maraming tao, syempre marami siyang fans, marami rin siyang batang fans, youth fans na naapektuhan nito. So, yan, mas malaki yung impact kapag sikat or influential yung tao. Number 5, portrayal of rewards such as the grieving family and boy-girlfriend can foster revenge motivations for suicide, especially among angry and dejected youth. So nakikita minsan natin sa mga TV shows, sa mga movies, 'di ba, na kapag ang anak ay may galit sa magulang, parang gusto niyang gumante sa kanyang magulang. So ang gagawin niyang gante or revenge is that taking his or her own life. Kasi gusto niya lang mag-mourn yung parents niya. And so kapag yan nakita ng totoong na teenager in real life na may galit din sa kanyang parents, iisipin niya na rewarding yun kasi magmo-mourn sa death niya yung parents niya. So iniisip niya, ay oo nga maganda. So kapag pala namatay ako, doon ko makikita mahal ako ng parents ko. Parang ganun. So, dapat lesson na natin yung panonood ng mga ganon kasi it really has a big impact, especially on vulnerable minds. So, like another example, boy-girlfriend, again, example lang po ha, hindi ko po sinasabing lahat ng boys cheater. Example lang po, huwag niyo po akong i-hate. Ayan, for example, in a series or movie, a girl found out that her boyfriend is cheating on her. And so, as a revenge, she took her own life. And so, nakita din ng teenager in real life na nakikita niya, ay, magandang revenge nga yun para sa boyfriend kong cheater. So, ayan, dyan nila nakukuha yung mga ganitong ideas. Actually, ang dami na ring cases, di ba, out there na nag-commit sila ng suicide because of revenge lang, para revenge sa kanilang ex-partner, ganon. And saan nila kaya nakukuha yun? I wonder, diba? Next, number 6, media reporting indicating suicide as something that is unavoidable and that someone will be next. Especially ngayon, pandemic, parang ang dami natin nakikita sa hindi naman sa legit news providers, but sa Facebook, for example, may mga nag-share na ang dami nang nagsusuicide this past few months kasi ang nawawalan ng source of income, nawawalan ng work, and sobrang stressed, and ganon. The way they share it, yung mga captions nila na isa na naman pong kababayan natin ang pinapakita kasi natin sa mga ganong klaseng post na unavoidable siya. Na oo nga pandemic ngayon. So, normal na ba yan na marami na talaga mag-suicide? So, ayun. Number 7, presenting suicide as a political issue as due to desegregation or job stress. And 8, victims shown as possessing desirable high status. So kapag pinakita na yung victim is desirable siya, maganda, mabait, may high status siya, sila yung minomodel na ating mga kabataan kasi. And that is a big factor on sa contagion na to. Yan. Dr. Gould, naalala niyo si Dr. Madeline Gould kanina, she briefly discussed the possible influence of internet content and chat rooms on fostering suicide contagion. She mentioned research on health-seeking behavior demonstrating that adolescents are likely to look to the internet for help with problem solving. So in her another study naman, na-find out nila na there's chat rooms ng mga teenagers na sila magpi-peers na lahat sila may suicidal ideations and lahat sila nagiging close because of that, and doon din nagsisimula yung mga cluster of suicides. So yun, nakita yun ni Dr. Gould. And nakita niya na yun nga, peers or through friends, doon malaking factor siya in this contagion. Ayan, for example, 13 reasons why. Please don't hate me for this. This is a good show in terms of cinematography, yung mga nila, OSTs, maganda. However, this show is not for all of us. Okay? Why? After 13 Reasons Why, if you haven't seen 13 Reasons Why or you don't have any idea on what the show is, the main character, Hannah Baker, she took her own life because of 13 reasons. Kaya nga siya 13 Reasons Why. And this show teaches us a lot of lessons. Pero as I mentioned earlier, this show is not for all of us. Okay, after 13 Reasons Why, Season 1 has been premiered, paano ba? Ano bang term for that? Yung pinalabas sa Netflix. There is a 28.9% increase in suicide rates among people ages 10 to 17. So kita nyo naman, the youth, teenagers. That is according to LA Times. So this is in the US. Ano? And yan, di ba every year ang taas na ng suicide rates, ng deaths caused by suicide. And so itong 28.9 na to, significant na siya. Malaki na siyang increase. So imagine how many people have taken the inspiration from 13 Reasons Why and kung paano nila ginaya yung ginawa ni Hannah Baker. Kung paano sila na-inspire by that suicide. Ayan. According to Albert Bandura, he is one of my favorite theorists. His theory is about social cognitive theory. He taught us something about modeling. Okay. The first is attention. Ayan. Observing individuals whom we frequently associate with or popular figures from TV and movies. We observe the behavior we think is important or valuable to us. Next, representation. Symbolic representations na retain yung imagery sa utak natin. Behavioral production, reproducing the behavior, and motivation, yung ginagawa niya na, yung kanyang minodel. So, anong connect? So, anong connect nito sa suicide contagion? Connect siya kasi we introject the behaviors that we see from people that we model. And yan, according to Albert Bandura, we observe behavior we think is important or valuable to us. For example, in 13 Reasons Why, sometimes we see that, parang same kami ng case ni Hannah Baker. Parang, pares pala kami nararamdaman. So is it okay for me to do the same thing she did? Ganon. And then representation, nare-retain sa isip natin na, oo nga no. Nagkakaroon tayo ng symbolic representations. And then, behavioral production. Ayan. If nakikita nyo yung typo, congrats. Nakafocus talaga kayo sa aking presentation. Thank you. And ayun, yun yung reproducing of behavior. And then motivation is ito yung nakakatakot na part. Kasi motivation, it is most effective when learners are motivated to perform the model behavior. So sabihin natin na model niya na ready na siya i-reproduce yung behavior, pero wala siyang motivation. Paano pag may nag-trigger sa kanya and na-motivate siyang gawin yun? So, di ba? Nakakatakot. And who are the most vulnerable? Ayan, youth. Tayong mga youth. Ayan. According to Feist and Roberts, favorite book ko, adolescence is an adaptive phase of personality development, a period of trial and error, and young people frequently reject the standards of their elders, preferring instead the values of peer or group or gang. So, according kay Feist and his co-authors, sabi nila, ang adolescence is a part of our development na dyan pa lang tayo kasi nag-a-adapt. Adaptive phase yan. And tayo, mga youth, mga young people, we frequently reject the ideas or standards ng ating elders. At mas piniprefer natin yung company and values ng ating peers. So, kanina, diba, na as I mentioned earlier, na pwedeng maging mode of transmission ng ating peers. So, mas lalo tayo nagiging vulnerable through that. And then, the effect of contagion appears to be strongest among adolescents. This is a summary of CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the US, from the studies of, ayan, ni-cite ko sa baba. Andyan, from the studies of them. So yan, sabi nga nila, the effect of contagion appears to be strongest among adolescents. Kasi tayo yung pinaka-vulnerable. Kasi nasa adaptive phase pa tayo. Ayan. And number 2, people with existing disorders, like mood disorders, depression, for example. People who develop mood disorders also possess a psychological vulnerability. That is according to Barlow and Durant, Abnormal Psychology. Sabi nila, itong mga nagkakaroon ng mood disorders or kahit anong mental disorders, sila na mismo meron na silang psychological vulnerability. So sila na mismo, mas vulnerable sila compared to those who does not have existing disorders. And grieving people, ayan. Okay, grief is a normal part of life, especially if we have lost someone that we love. It is normal when you grieve, you mourn over the loss of your loved one, but then after ilang months or weeks, you can move on, you can adapt to the new life after the passing of your loved one. However, yun yung tinatawag nating integrative grieving. Integrative grieving. Grief, yes, yun. So yun yung normal, no? Normal yun for us humans to grieve. However, when grief lasts beyond typical time, suicidal thoughts increase substantially, and the bereaved focuses mostly on joining the beloved deceased. So ito na yung tinatawag nating complicated grief. Ito na yung grief characterized by feelings of loss and emotions so painful that a person has trouble resuming a normal life after the passing of his or her loved one. So in this kind of grief, nagfo-focus yung tao mostly on joining. So susunod siya, no, sa kanyang beloved deceased. So paano kunwari, for an example, if the person na nag-pass away na kanyang beloved, ang cause of death ay suicide, for an example. So paano yun i-accept ng tao yung ng mga taong na left behind niya? So ayan, kapag napunta tayo sa complicated grief, ano na po siya, medical emergency na siya and kailangan na ng intervention by a professional. Kasi vulnerable po sila. And number 4, excuse me po, people with survivor's guilt. Ayan. This is a story from AJC News. Yan. This is not news shop po talaga. 2 students who survived the 2018 Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida died of apparent suicides. So itong dalawang survivors of the shooting in Florida, meron silang tinatawag natin survivor's guilt o yung tinatawag natin na kapag may na-encounter tayong incident na lahat ng kasama natin unfortunately, naging victims. And tayo lang yung nag-survive. Ayun, nagkakaroon tayo ng survivor's guilt. In their cases, silang dalawa lang yung nag-survive sa shooting na yan sa Florida. And hindi nila kinaya kasi mabigat kasi ang guilt. Alam natin yan, mabigat ang guilt. So hindi nila kinaya, so they took their own lives. And another, Jeremy Rickman, whose 6-year-old daughter was killed in 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre in Newtown, Connecticut, was found dead in his office building. So, ayan, ito is combination ng grieving people or grieving person and survivor's guilt. So, namatay na yung anak niya, and then may survivor's guilt pa siya. So, hindi niya kinaya yung bigat. And so, yun. So, how do you protect yourself and the people around you from this phenomena? Paano nga ba natin proprotektahan sarili natin at mga mahal natin sa buhay na hindi tayo mahawaan nito? Ayan. According to them sa AJC News, mental health screenings, yan, sobrang important yan. To help minimize risk of contagion among the community, the HHS, or Health and Human Resource Services in US recommends family members, friends, peers, and colleagues of the victim evaluated by a mental health professional. Those deemed at risk should seek additional mental health services. So, ayan. So, kung tayo may mga loved ones tayo na victims of suicide, sila, kailangan din nila mismo na ma-screen ng ating mga mental health professionals para makita kung sila ba ay vulnerable, if sila ba ay at risk. Ayan. While there's the fear that if we talk about suicide, we may be inadvertently promoting it, the Conversation reported in 2015. The Conversation is a news provider in Australia, if I'm not mistaken. If we encourage young people to not talk about suicide, we may unintentionally increase suicidal adolescents' feelings of isolation, which contributes to the risk of suicide. Sometimes, especially ating mga elderly parents, naisip nila na, wag na lang natin pag-usapan para hindi ka na maapektuhan. That is, dun tayo hindi masyadong aware na baka pala unintentionally mas nag-i-increase yung suicidal feelings nila kasi hindi natin sila kinakausap about that kapag may nakita silang case or news. So what we can do, kayo po as parents or as kunwari may younger siblings kayo, debrief them about sa nakita nilang news na suicide is wala siyang isang cause lang. So every individual has their own factors on why they did what they did. So ayan natin sila, debrief natin sila na suicide is not the answer to everything. Okay, suicide is the temporary answer, is the permanent answer to a temporary problem. So debrief natin sila, kausapin natin ng maayos para mas maging aware sila or mas ma-educate sila. Pero yung approach din natin is important. Siyempre, dapat ang approach natin is yung gentle, kind lang, yung educating, hindi yung pilit. Kasi kapag pilit yung, kunwari, perspective natin, sarili nating subjective perspective yung pinipilit natin sa kanila, mas hindi nila tatanggapin yun. So, the approach on how you talk to them is very important. Ayan. Yan, and mind what you share. Ayan, kung naalala niya si Dr. Madeline Gold kanina, ayan, gusto ko kasi yung study niya, ang galing niya kasi. She listed following specific guidelines for media coverage of suicide. So, hindi lang siya for legit news providers like GMA, TV5. Hindi lang siya para doon. Para din siya sa atin na nasa social media. Since we have accounts on social media, we have to be responsible on what we post, what we share, what we retweet, what we upload. Kailangan maging responsible din tayo in order to build a competent community. Para nakaka-lesson tayo sa ganitong klaseng mga contagion. Number 1, consider whether the suicide in question is newsworthy. Kung makita mo naman na hindi naman newsworthy, wag mo nang i-share. Kasi baka may matrigger pa sa news na yan sa mga makakakita ng i-share mo. Number 2, do not misrepresent suicide as a mysterious act by an otherwise healthy or high-achieving persons. There's these movies kasi na they take their own lives as a mysterious act and ayun, parang 'di ba? By an otherwise healthy or high-achieving person. So, makikita ng mga viewers na, oo nga no, ang talino niya sa paggawa niya ng ganun. So, kita niya. Number 3, do not present suicide as a reasonable
or understandable way of problem solving. So parang as I mentioned earlier, wag nating i-present na suicide is the only answer to our problems. And number 4, include information that suicide is fatal complication of mental and or substance abuse disorders which are treatable. So if nakita natin sa news na ang cause of suicide is because of mental or substance abuse disorders, sabihin natin or educate natin ang mga tao na these kinds of things, these kinds of matters can be, are treatable, okay? Can be treated. So, para malaman nila na suicide is not the only answer, okay? Suicide is not the only way out of that. Number 5, include information that suicide can be prevented with appropriate treatment. Parang kanina din. And number 6, exercise care when using pictures of victims since it remains unknown if pictures increase contagion. So, as of now, unknown pa if yung pictures ng mga victims is nakaka-increase din ng contagion. However, kailangan pa rin natin mag-ingat sa pag-share sa mga pictures na yun. Likewise, sa pag-share din ng mga pictures ng mga self-harming stuffs, no? Mag-ingat din tayo. And preferably, wag na natin i-share yung mga self-harming pictures kasi nakaka-trigger siya ng self-harming tendencies din among the vulnerable minds out there in the internet. So, ganon din sa pag-share ng pictures ng mga victims of suicide. And number 7, do not provide a detailed description of method. Evidence shows that when enough details are given, vulnerable youths will commit suicide in the same spot and or with the same methods. So after the 13 reasons why, season 1 was shown, there were cases of suicide in the US na ginawa nila yung same method of Hannah Baker from 13 Reasons Why. So, kasi ang detailed kasi nung ginawa ni Hannah Baker. And so, na-inspire, di ba? Na-inspire yung mga victims din na ginaya siya. So, wag tayong mag-provide ng mga detailed descriptions on how they did what they did. Personally, kaya rin ako na-inspire to share this because back in college, sobrang super vulnerable pa ako. And nung nakita ko yung ginawa ni Hannah Baker, parang gusto ko rin gawin. Ayun, so kita niyo naman, vulnerable. So, but I thank God na ngayon, vulnerable pa rin ako, pero much stronger than before. He made me stronger as time passed by. So yun, kaya ako na-inspire na mag-talk about this topic. Kasi alam ko kung gaano kapag lalaruan ng utak mo, if you are vulnerable, kung gaano papasok sa isip mo yung mga ganitong details, no? Parang gusto mo talagang gayahin. So, ayan, do not provide detailed descriptions of the method. Okay? Lalo na pag sobrang graphic and sobrang malala, ganyan. Wag na tayong mag-provide ng sobrang detailed na description ng method kasi baka mas gagayahin lang or mas may inspire lang ang ating mga viewers or mga nakakakita sa ating social media. Number 8, limit the prominence, length, and number of stories. Number 9, edit headlines to match and not sensationalize the story. Kasi nowadays, di ba, ang dami na nag-glamorize, ang dami na nag-romanticize ng suicide as a justifiable act. Hindi po. Number 10, provide local treatment resources with each story. And to that, here are some centers and hospitals you can go to kung kailangan nyo ng help, kung if you think and you feel like you really need help, if you're vulnerable or at risk, pwede nyo po siyang screenshot and hindi ko na po nakuha yung kanilang phone numbers, but it's Googleable naman po. It's in Google. So yan, first is Amang Rodriguez Memorial Medical Center in Marikina, NCMH, National Center for Mental Health in Mandaluyong, Ateneo Center for Family Ministries in Quezon City, PGH in Manila, UST Graduate Psych Schools, Psychotrauma Clinic in Sampaloc, Manila din. So ito, please correct me if I'm wrong po later. If I think these centers, these hospitals are offering free psychological checkup, no? PGH, I'm sure, free talaga yan. And lastly naman, for my personal suggestions para hindi tayo mahawaan. For yourself, para hindi tayo mahawaan sa sarili natin, know your triggers and limits. If you know na, iyan, kaya importante din na we know our triggers and our limits. Kasi if we know na alam natin makakapag-trigger yan sa atin, wag na natin panoorin or wag na natin basahin. Ganun. In the season 1 of sorry po. The season 1 of 39 Reasons Why, pinanood ko siya. And na-curious ako sa season 2. But then, na-realize ko na hindi talaga para sa akin yung show na yun. So, season 3, hindi ko siya pinanood. So, I knew that yun na yung limit ko. Hindi ko na kaya panoorin pa more than that. And for other people naman, education talaga and awareness is the key. These things may help prevent the contagion. So, education and awareness talaga. Tayong mga nakakaalam, tayong may mga background in psychology and mental health, tayong mga mental health advocate, yan, spread lang natin yung mga ganitong klaseng mga awareness, no? Para mas na-educate natin ang mga tao sa paligid-ligid natin. Ayan. I think that was my last slide. And before I end, I just want to say that you guys are stellar. Ayan. So, you guys matter. And remember that you plus me is we. Yan. So, you can suffer, but please do not suffer alone. Please. Ayan. There will always be people who are very willing, very, very willing to help you. Ayan. At yan, isa na rin po ang Mental Health Resilience Podcast sa mga willing tumulong sa inyo. So, wag po kayo mahihiya lumapit sa aming page. Ayan. So, maraming salamat sa pakikinig and I hope you were enlightened by something or you were reminded by something na nasama ko sa presentation na to. So, thank you everyone. Miss Ariane?
Ayan, praise God, Main, no? Oo nga, napakadami na kasi ngayong lumalabas sa social media na parang natural na lang, na suicide is not anymore a new case, parang ganon. Lalong-lalo na sa generation natin ngayon, no, where everyone is talking about it. And everyone is parang not anymore, hindi na siya ganun nakakatakot, no? Marami sa mga, meron kaming mga cases dito sa school niyan. Talagang early like grade 7, no? Yung parang nagkakaroon na sila ng mga risk-taking behavior. Makikita mo na lang, no? May mga naglalaslas, may magpo-post sa kanilang timeline ng mga pictures about suicide. At naalala ko yung totoo ba talaga yung app dati daw na ano nga yun? Momo challenge ba yun, Main?
Yes,
Hindi ko masyado
there are reports
nasunod.
po na totoo daw siya.
Grabe, no? So, it will challenge you to take suicide attempts, yung mga ganyan. So, grabe na talaga yung ating generation ngayon. And, kung makikita natin, no, Satan, the enemy, would really try to take away our mind away from God. And away from our mental health. At nakikita ko ngayon na talagang contagious talaga siya. That's really the word, no? Contagious. Malala na siya. Kaya nga sabi sa ating World Health Organization, 'di ba, na here in this year na ito na yung the next pandemic is mental illness. So, yun. Thank you so much din sa mga shinare mo na mga tips, no? On how we can cope up with this stressing situation, stressing exposure to suicide. Okay, so may question dito sa loob ng ating Zoom. Sabi niya, ayan, how about sa ating mga bata, no, sa mga children, what can we, is it proper to teach this info to the kids or baka matrigger lang sila? Ayan, how to best approach this topic to our children.
Ayan. So, may mga nabasa rin po akong studies before na it's better to educate them as early as possible. But then, syempre, observe nyo rin po kung how your kids take certain things, paano nila piniperceive yung mga bagay-bagay. Syempre, you have to observe that. And you have to be really, really careful on the words that you use while educating them po. So, it's like in, pag kailangan po talaga natin educate ang ating mga kiddos. Ayan. For me po I don't know if others have the insights po. Ayan.
So, may mga nakita naman ako doon na hindi naman natin sila masyadong bibigyan ng detailed information about it, no? Basta, ayun, tuturuan lang natin sila ng pwedeng healthy coping skills when they encounter stresses or problems in life, di ba? At ipapakita lang natin sa kanila na there are a lot of influence sa social media, sa internet na for them is not healthy anymore. And yun nga, I think merong shinare sa PYC dati, sa Philippine Youth for Christ page doon, kung saan meron daw page for the parents to really, or siguro apps yun, na pwede nilang i-monitor, tulungan yung mga anak nila sa mga internet negative influences na using social media and internet. Kasi yan na talaga, napaka-open nila, lalong-lalo na online class ngayon. Nasa kanila yung freedom ng use ng Wi-Fi and their phones. So for Miss Main, ayan na, it's okay to really tell them about this awareness, yun nga, and also to yun nga, so ating mga parents ay ma-educate din yung mga parents how to help their children develop healthy coping skills and yan, keep their mental health. Yan. Okay, so Pastor Jeff, can you help me sa ating po mga Facebook viewers kung kayo pa ay may mga katanungan? Kindly message it and we are going to answer it now. Yan, merong pinost ulit, sabi dito, due to the demands of new normal, especially to the kids, how can we separate these bad effects of technology to the kids? Kailan ba talaga sila pwedeng mag-expose sa technology, Miss Min? What do you think?
Personally po, I think kung kaya niyo pong i-delay yung kanilang exposure sa internet, pero kasi now, ngayong pandemic, classes are online, so just regulate what they do on their gadgets, kung ano yung ginagawa nila, ano yung mga sites na ino-open nila, ano yung videos na pinapanood nila, ano yung mga bagay na binabasa nila on the internet. Kasi ngayon, ang hirap na pigilan ang mga bata no na maggamit ng gadgets and be engaged in the internet kasi especially online classes na. So kahit yung mga sobrang bata pa, nag-online classes na din. So we really have to be responsible. Tayong mga kayo pong mga parents. Sabi ko, sana tayong mga parents, hindi pala ako parent. So, yun, we have to regulate talaga. We have to be observant on what they do on the internet. Ayan po.
Yeah, kaya nga 'di ba Miss Main, kung sa television may merong board, I forgot yung ano, MTRCB ba 'yon? May board na nagre-regulate sa kanila kapag may karahasan, sexual or anything na nakaka-harm sa ating mga bata. Nare-regulate yung mga channel na 'yon. At sinasabi doon kapag this show is not for children. Yan. Ganun din tayo. Maganda rin talaga na sa internet, maybe magkaroon ng sa Philippines na I don't know kung meron na tayong ganon um, na group na talagang nagbibigay ng advocacy or nagbibigay ng regulation, information sa ating mga parents on what are the sites that they need to regulate or parang bigyan ng information na itong mga sites na to, itong mga yan, may mga times hindi talaga nakakatulong sa mga bata. So, yun. Maybe kasi ang hirap talaga i-control lalo na sa social media. Napakalawak ng influence. So, yun. Ayan. Thank you, Miss Main. Actually, meron din ako nabasa. Sabi doon, no, kapag yung bata ay 5 years old below, yan, they are really not, or kaya nga 6 years old eh. Kasi hindi pa masyadong develop yung kanilang morality, di ba? Or yung sa stages ni Piaget, parang there is a time talaga na the cognitive mind is the morality ng utak nila ay na-develop. I think it's mga 12 years old pa, di ba? Yung mga ganon, yung abstract reasoning nila na madidiscern na nila kung ano yung tama at mali. Yun. So, kaya yung 5 years old pababa or 6 years old pababa, or yan, these early children cannot discern what's right and wrong. Kung nakikita nila yun sa internet, kunyari nakikita nila si Tom and Jerry nagpapatayan, okay? For them, it is okay. Acceptable yun, di ba? Kasi no one is telling them that it's wrong. So, yun, I think, talaga po. Yan. Yes, ano pa po? Meron pa pong tanong dito, Miss Main. Yan. Sabi dito, in addition, narinig ko na bukod sa malakas na influence ng technology, isa din sa nakakadelikado sa aming mga anak ay radiation, which I believe nagiging triggering factor siya sa suicidal contagion, especially pag may di sila maintindihan. Ayan po.
Yung radiation po, if contributing factor siya in suicide contagion, tama po ba ang pagkakaintindi ko?
Opo.
Ayan. So, I will look further into that po kasi wala pa po ako nababasa yung na direct correlation between yung radiation mismo, yung radiation talaga mismo from gadgets to suicide contagion ano. Pero yung mga laman po ng mga tinitignan naman nakikita, napapanood, na mabasa ng ating mga kabataan, yun po mga contributing factors po yun. So, kayo po, kung meron po kayong ibang, kung may insights po kayo.
Aha. Sa tingin ko, kung mami ba tong nagtanong or parent siya, I think radiation, nandun naman siya sa physical na stress na mararamdaman ng isang tao or ng isang bata, no? So, yung radiation, because of in front of the phones and the laptops will really make the person fatigue. Yan, meron ngang optical fatigue na nadadala yon at physical fatigue din, no? And it may cause stress talaga. Kaya maganda pa rin, no, magkaroon tayo ng ibang activity for our kids. Hindi lang in front of the mobile phones and laptops. Maybe we can go out sa nature, magkaroon ng, ayan, outreach or, yeah, or ibang activity na para hindi sila nai-stuck sa gadget. Yeah. Meron po ba kayong additional din, Ma'am Maine? Okay. So, okay na po. Ayun, meron pa daw as maybe Doc RG can also add or yeah, pwede po kayong free dito pa sa ating Zoom meeting if you have some reactions or suggestions you would like to add. Ayan. You can also share it with us. Okay,
Can
I have
ask question?
okay, go Pastor.
Okay, since I would like to get the opportunity, Doc RJ is with us. Doc RJ, to be honest, I am a preacher, and I met this sermon about the subliminal message. It talks about minds. Subliminal means below the threshold of sensation of or consciousness perceived by affecting someone's minds without their being aware of it. For example, may mga bagay may mga bagay tayong nakikita, especially in the context of the kids, na for example yung Tom and Jerry, nagpapatayan sila, hindi sila aware, parang masaya lang yun, pero pumapasok daw pala iyon, sabi ng subliminal message doon sa ating subconscious mind. For example, kapag napanood tayo ng pornography, hindi natin mai-erase yun actually sa ating isip. One way to remove it is to stop it. Tama? Pero hindi talaga natin siya ma-remove. Maalala natin siya. And yung mga suicidal, yung mga killing, yung mga bagay na critical talaga na akala natin masaya, joyful lang siya, yung mga Disney, mga kung ano-ano. Pero actually, pumapasok daw yun talaga sa ating isip. I don't know particular doon sa isip. Pero naapektuhan daw yung ating frontal lobe. Kaya yung ating decision making ay naapektuhan. Paano po iyon? Paano po natin iyon makukuha? I mean, kasi I have this friend na nagkaroon kami ng pinastoral counselingan niya ako. And then we talk about the saan ba yun? Presentation. Basta we talk about the reason and conscience, the equality of reasons and conscience, bago yung ating feelings. Pero ang question ko lang po talaga dito ay yung mga napapanood natin na mga bagay-bagay na akala natin masaya nung bata tayo, pero hanggang ngayon dala-dala natin. Kaya siguro tayo nakakaranas ng mga ganitong mga bagay. Ang tawag po namin dito ay subliminal message na hindi tayo aware pero pumapasok sa ating isipan. Paano po ang ating gagawin to dito, Doc or Ma'am Maine, to handle this situation? Kasi I believe ay nagiging factor din ito sa suicidal contagion na ating pinagdaraanan or nararanasan ngayon.
Okay, thank you, Pastor, for that very interesting question, no, about yung mga cartoons na pinapanood natin. Naalala ko, favorite ko nga si Tom and Jerry noon kasi parang cute nila, di ba? Hahabulan. I think yung speaker mo na si Maine, baka you'd like to have some inputs first, then
addition ko lang po, ma'am, kasi doon sa mga movies nating pinapanood, when I heard the subliminal message, parang cartoon lang sila, pero actually nagpo-portray yun ng mga word na sex, parang ganun, pero hindi natin alam. For example, yung laro na Underground, yung kotse-kotse, doon sa building na yon, kapag i-zoom mo yon tapos ibinaliktad mo, nandoon yung word na sex. Hindi natin alam. It's a deception actually. It's a deception of the original author or owner of it na pumupunta sa ating subconscious mind. Kaya gusto kong malaman how to handle this, paano yung ating gagawin dito.
I think Doc RG has more knowledge about this kasi syempre psychiatrist siya. And ayan, more on the unconscious na kasi na nagsisimula pa sa mga napapanood natin ng kabataan natin. So, I think mas marami pong mabibigay si Sir RG. Si Doc RG.
Okay, sige. So, Pastor, with regards to your question, nga may mga lumalabas nga, 'di ba? Like when you look at YouTube and you look at this yung mga Walt Disney movies na children, may mga pinapakita silang mga subliminal messages. Yun nga, 'di ba, na in this scene sa Lion King, alam ko may mga subliminal messages doon na about aggression or sexuality, which is hindi mo alam kung sinadya ba to ng mga creators, bakit nila gagawin to, lalabas yung word na sex pag inano mo, 'di ba? Pag freeze mo, 'di ba? Well, with regards to yung effect noon sa bata, I mean specifically sa bata or sa youth, yung unconscious effect noon. You can kasi marami naman, 'di ba? Maraming na-affect kasi maraming nanonood noon, 'di ba? Pero what you can do is you can see sino ba yung mga nagma-manifest ng behavior na problematic. While it may have an effect, no, yung mga napapanood before, we can also look at the other factors then na mas nakaka-cause ng effect, no. True, may mga subliminal effects yun. Pero kasi sa dami ng mga dumadaan, pumapasok ng mga subliminal images, pwedeng hindi talaga siya ganun ka significant, no? Pwede kasi ang mas significant is yung nakikita natin recently na mga phenomenon such as yung sa social media. Yung nabanggit nga ni Maine, yung mga how social media we can see is playing a very big role, no, sa suicidal behavior particularly. So with regards to that, yung mga subliminal messages, it may not really play that much of a role, given na marami naman kasi tayo nanonood, no, pero hindi naman talaga ganun yung effect. Siguro there are other factors pa that play more significant roles in contributing to suicidal behavior and suicidal contagion.
Ayun. Thank you so much, Doc RG, for sharing that thing, no? Yun, Pastor. Totoo yun kasi kapag daw po na-stimulate yung emotional brain natin na tinatawag, yung morality sa brain natin ay hindi na siya ganoon gumagana. Parang ganun daw yung naintindihan ko doon, Pastor Jack. So, itong mga entertainment na to, they just really want to influence the emotional brain. Para yung emotional brain na natin, yung magko-command sa atin, imbes the moral brain natin. Imbes yung the frontal lobe. Parang ganun yung nangyayari dyan, Pastor Jack. Kaya, sorry for the background. Yan, sa labas. So yun. And Pastor Jack, I think talagang sa bata pa lang, no, yung foundation na ibinibigay natin sa ating mga anak, kailangan na natin talagang ingatan yon. Kasi kapag na-expose na ang ating mga anak sa mga ganon, napakahirap na. Kapag na-plasticize na yun sa brain nila. Tama ba yung term na yun? Doc RG, no? Yung parang ganon. Kapag naging crystallized sa brain na nila yun, there will come a time na talagang when they are adults, di ba? Or kahit nga bata pa they can do that aggressive behavior. Meron akong dun sa school ko dati, elementary siya, no? Kinder pa lang, Pastor Jack. Parang 4 years old pa lang. Tapos, itong batang to, no, nagdudura siya sa mga kaklase niya, sinisira niya yung mga upuan, tapos hindi siya nakikinig sa teacher niya. Sobrang, niya na, sobrang aggression ba to? Pero, hindi siya mapigilan. And, tinanong namin yung lola niya, tapos sabi ng lola niya, ang lagi daw pinapanood ng bata is yung mga action films, tapos sinabi pa nga yung probinsyano daw, ganun. Pero sa tingin ko may iba pa ding factor, no? Hindi lang yung mga media influence na 'yon. nalaman din namin na nagkaroon ng separation yung mom and dad niya, and parang wala ng atensyon na nabibigay sa kanya yung mom niya. So, may ibang factor din na pwedeng naka-trigger talaga na nung ganong behavior ng bata. And so, 4 years old, ay meron na siyang mga ganoong nangyayari sa kanya. So, gano'n na lang talaga yung ating mind. Yeah, everything that it dwells, talagang napakadali niya ma-absorb, ma-absorb yung mind natin. So, any comments po about this? Ayun, Doc. Doc, pwede ka mag-unmute and share po itong sinend niyo po.
Siguro to somewhat answer the query, no, yung ano ba talaga yung effect ng mga subliminal messages, no, sa unconscious natin. One way to look at it is to see that yung the way our brain works is that yung nasa-store sa long-term memory natin, kung babalikan natin, di ba? Ano ba yung mga memories natin? Usually, yun yung mga memories na coupled with strong emotions. Kung babalikan natin yung memories natin nung bata tayo, di ba? Usually, yun yung mga masaya, yung mga may kasamang emotion, or yung mga malulungkot na memories, no? So, yun yung napapatong. So, when we see something, when we watch something or movie, sometimes hindi naman talaga ganun ka significant kasi sa dami ng nang napapanood natin, no. I mean, it might not stick that much unless there is something na may strong na emotion na kasama yun na panood natin. I think means saying something. Would you like to add?
Ayan. May question po kasi si Pastor. Since you're dealing with sa minds, totoo ba na sa subconscious mind natin na hindi siya naaalis? Ayan. So, I would like to add for sa answer ni Doc RG na if I remember correctly po sa psychoanalytic theory ni Freud, ng ating Papa Freud, ayan, yung nasa-store po sa ating subconscious, they can be repressed na for forever, na hindi na siya babalik, or pwede siyang matrigger palabas sa consciousness ulit. So, there are factors po na pwedeng matrigger yung nasa subconscious natin na, for example, napaaway tayo or may ginawa tayo na something na hindi natin alam bakit natin ginawa. Yun pala may pinaghuhugutan tayo sa subconscious natin na hindi na natin naaalala. So may posible po may na nag-trigger nun. Or pwede naman po siyang ma-repress na talaga for yun, ma-repress na forever. Doc RG, tama po ba?
Yes, especially sa mga bata, no, sa mga children. Makikita natin na yung mga bata, very unique yung nila, yung level ng resilience nila. May iba sa kanila na suffered traumatic events ng bata, pero nagagawa ng mind nila is nare-repress yun. Okay, so kahit papaano okay pa rin sila growing up, no, na nakakalimutan nila yung part na yun.
Okay. Thank you so much, Doc and Jane, for sharing with us, no? Pero parang naliligaw na tayo, no? Napupunta na tayo sa mga ganong topic. So, balik tayo sa suicide contagion na po. So, yun. Ngayon na-realize natin yung pagkakaroon talaga ng regulation and evaluation sa ating mga influence, how social media influence us. Ngayon, ang tanong naman is, yung parang personal na encounter, Miss Maine or Doc RG. Kunyari, actually, hindi naman ako personal na nakakita nun, but there are my meron akong students, meron akong mga kaibigan na talagang nakakita sila ng actual na nag-suicide na mga kaibigan din nila, pero hindi natuloy, no? Ah, nag-suicide attempt, pero napaka-tragic. Nakita nila yung dugo, no? Nakita nila kung paano, yun, gusto magpakamatay ng mga taong yun. How can we help these people po? Yung mga talagang naka-encounter ng ganun. Yes, Miss May. And then Doc RG.
Ayan, sige po. Ano po, yun po, as I mentioned earlier po, yung kailangan, kapag meron tayong mga kilala na mga naka-encounter, nakakita first-hand ng ganitong mga cases, no, nakita mismo yung dugo, ayan, parang sinabi niyo po, Miss Arian, kailangan po talaga na mental health screening na sila as early as possible. Mula dun sa incident na nakita nila, dapat po ma-screen na sila ng mga mental health professionals para po makita kung sila ba ay at risk, kung sila ba ay vulnerable, if meron po silang kunwari mga personality factors or early childhood experiences na pwedeng makapagpalala po sa kanilang vulnerability sa mga nakita nila. So, ayun po talaga, kailangan po talaga as early as possible, intervention po kaagad. Ayan po. Si Doc.
Ayun. Also, we also have to, yun nga, sabi nga ni May, no, kailangan ma-process, kailangan ma-debrief yung mga people involved doon sa naka-witness. I remember meron sa hospital namin nag-suicide na patient, tumalon siya doon sa building. So may mga guard na nakakita. It was a Sunday night, tapos doon sa 4th floor, tumalon siya, pinilit niyang buksan yung bintana head first. So nakita ng mga guard doon, nakita nila yung pagkahulog, no? And nagulat sila. And the thing we have to remember is, of course, trauma is a normal feeling to an abnormal event, especially one that involves significant harm or death to the person or to another, or witnessing another person in a way. So it doesn't mean that trauma will develop into a disorder. Yung tinatawag natin post-traumatic stress disorder, no? Kailangan natin tingnan kung yung doon sa, let's say, 4 sila na tao naka-witness, lahat sila na trauma at that time. Pero doon sa 3, okay, dahan-dahan nawala na yung pakiramdam, hindi na sila natulala, hindi na sila nagulat, hindi sila iyak na iyak. At first, ganun. Pero may isang tao doon na mga tuloy-tuloy pa rin, ganun yung pakiramdam niya. Ayaw na niyang mag-report sa work kasi ganun yung experience. So it's very important to screen, to assess if a person develop post-traumatic stress disorder with regards to witnessing a suicide act or any disaster, any tragic act na involved death or mutilation.
Ayun. Maraming salamat po, Doc and no? Siguro I will refer na lang talaga to those psychologists and psychiatrists for the briefing, kasi hindi pa ko masyadong ganong practice about those people na naka-encounter nga po talaga ng suicide, how to debrief them. But maybe you can train us, Doc. So yan, in time po. So praise God for our wonderful topic this morning, no? And I hope sa ating mga viewers, kung wala na po kayong tanong, and sa ating meron pa po ba kayong tanong dito sa ating Zoom room, or anything you would like to share, mga kapodcast dyan?
I think po si Lance, si Lance Pueblo po ay kabatch ko siya, and now he's taking masteral. I think meron po siyang insights na gusto niyang i-share. So Lance, kayo mo yan. Go Lance!
Hello po. Good morning everyone. So I'm Lance Pueblo. About sa topic na to, may mga naging nakausap na rin akong mga tao na mga prone nag-suicide attempt and hindi natuloy. At nagsasend pa talaga sila ng mga pictures, ng mga about, nandun na yung act, nandun na yung ano. So, for me, kailangan talagang nandun ka para sa tao na yun. And then, i-refer nyo na din agad sa professional. Kasi masyadong mataas yung risk. Kasi pag hindi na-report agad, masyadong mabigat sa damdamin kasi ikaw yung may responsibility doon sa taong yun. Kasi ikaw yung last niyang nakausap. Kaya it's better na i-refer niya rin agad at malaman din ng family niya or someone na may risk siya sa pag-suicide attempt para matulungan natin siya. Kasi harmful na siya sa sarili niya. So, yun lang yung gusto kong i-share sa lahat na nanonood para naman alam nila kung anong gagawin nila pag may nag-share sa kanilang ibang tao sa pag-suicide attempt. Yun lang po. Thank you.
Thank you so much for adding that and emphasizing that, Mr. Lance, no? Na yun nga, these things are too much na for us to carry alone. So we need to refer. Yun nga, kapag kung tatandaan nyo, may levels of parang suicide severity ba yun? So kapag nakita natin may mga factors like stress in life, brokenness, separation, or lack of social support dun sa taong yun, then this person is really at risk. And after that, yung meron na silang thoughts or words na sinasabi tungkol sa suicide, tas meron na silang mga iniipon na gamit, tas attempt of suicide, then this needs to be referred na talaga. So, yun yung mga suicide signs na kailangan nating tandaan para ating ma-refer agad sa mga professionals. Okay, and Doc RG, yan po. So you will still
Yes.
add po.
Siguro briefly lang yung gusto ko lang i-share kung ano yung ginagawa namin sa hospital na pag-assess ng mga tao na nag-commit na ng suicide pero nag-attempt, 'di ba? So andun sila sa hospital, dinala, nag-overdose, naglaslas. So what we do is what we call yung mnemonic fail criteria. So FAIL. I'm not sure kung iba sa inyo sa psychology may familiar dito, no? So fail, first F, family and social support. So assess muna natin yung tao, usually kabataan, youth to, di ba? May family support ba siya na mauuwian in case pwede na siyang pauwiin, or yung parents ba niya OFW or nagbo-board ba siya sa bahay or nag-work dito sa bahay na mag-isa, no? Tapos next is yung attitude. After ba niya gawin yung attempt, is he remorseful or parang nasa isip sayang hindi ako natuluyan. Okay, that's one thing that you would need to check. Third is intent. So intent, ano ba yung gusto mo mangyari? Pag halimbawa naglaslas yung isang teenager, no? Gusto ba niya mamatay o ayaw niya? Kasi meron rin yung tinatawag na non-suicidal self-injury, no? May mga ibang bata na naglalaslas, pag tinanong mo, ano ba gusto mo mangyari? Gusto mo ba mag-suicide? Sasabihin ng bata. Actually, Doc, ayoko magpakamatay. Mas nararamdaman ko ng buhay ako pag nakikita ko yung dugo. Mas na-feel ko na may emosyon ako. Okay, and yung fourth is yung tinatawag na lethality. Yung lethality, ano ba yung paraan na ginawa nung person para mag-suicide? Uminom ba siya ng vitamins? Trinay ba niyang hindi huminga? Clinose ba niya yung ilong niya, di ba? We can say na low lethality yung mga yun as compared to kinuha yung binaril yung sarili or ng rope, di ba? So that we can see is based on those four things, di ba? We can have a rough assessment kung gaano ka-serious ba tong tao and ano yung level ng care na kailangan. At kailangan ba muna siyang dalhin sa isang facility para ma-ensure yung safety niya? Kailangan bang startan ng gamot and the like? Okay, or pwede na siyang pauwiin kung mukhang hindi naman ganun ka-mild and okay na, pwede na siyang ipasama sa family. Okay, yun lang.
Thank you so much po, Doc. Okay, Miss Main, meron ka pa po bang last closing words about our topic this morning?
Ayan, siguro I would like to remind every one of us na lang to be really mindful on what we share talaga sa social media, on what shows we watch, on what movies we watch. Kasi kahit hindi natin siya i-admit, na influence na nabibigyan din nila tayo ng influence, even subconsciously. Ayan, so we really need to be mindful, especially lahat naman siguro tayo ngayon may social media accounts na. So we have to be really careful on what we share kasi maraming nakakakita niyan sa internet. And sabi nga nila, once nalagay na sa internet, there's no going back na. So yun po.
Ayun. So, talagang napakaganda na ating pag-uusap ngayong umaga, no? And with our in the room psychiatrist, Doc RG, thank you so much for sharing that to us. Talagang makakatulong yun. Hindi lang sa ating mga mental health advocates, pati din sa mga people na nakikinig ngayon, mga parents. Ayan. I think marami tayong kasama sa Facebook Live ng mga parents na po. Thank you always for following this page, Mental Health Resilience Podcast. Sa mga Ilocano dito, ayan, thank you for coming again. So yun lang mga kapatid. And before we close with a prayer, I'd like to give a certificate of commendation for our speaker, and I'll be sharing to you the photo po. Ayan. Ayan. So, nakikita niyo na po ba? Ayan. So, Mental Health Resilience Podcast awards this certificate of commendation to Miss Australie Main D. Ramay in grateful recognition and sincere appreciation for sharing her expertise as our resource speaker in a webinar with the topic Suicide Contagion, the impact of suicide's sin on social media to vulnerable minds. Given this 13th day of September 2020, signed by Pastor Japet M. Maningding, our podcast director, and yours truly, the vice president of this support group, Arian Alvarez. So thank you very much, Miss Main, and for your wonderful topic information that you have shared with us. Thank you so much. And we are blessed to have you also as a volunteer here in our support group. Okay. So right now po, we would like to request Pastor Japet to close this with a prayer.
Okay, let's pray. Our divine God, Heavenly Father, we would like to praise you and exalt your name and glorify your name for giving us this opportunity to learn about this beautiful presentation of Sister May. I pray, Father, that all the lessons that we have learned will be engraved and instilled into our hearts and minds so that we can use this into our dealings with our fellows, especially in digital world. I pray, Father, that you continually help each one of us to be sensitive enough to the feelings of our fellows. Thank you for hearing and answering our prayers. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. So
Amen. Maraming salamat po. Ayan, mga kapodcast, see you po Sunday ulit, 9 a.m. for a wonderful topic. And any announcement, Pastor Jap?
Bye-bye na kayo sa ating mga kapodcast at i-start ko na yung live.
Thank you so much, Doc RG, Miss Main, and to all our Ilocano viewers.
Okay. Start na po yung live. Salamat.